Subaru probably didn't know it at the time, but in 1994 they created a legend. And that would be the very first generation Subaru Outback, known as the Legacy Outback for much of its life. Today we're taking a look at the 7th generation of that legend, and arguably one of the vehicles that helped start the crossover craze we see in North America. Subaru's timing couldn't have been more perfect, but this is a very different vehicle because unlike every other generation of Outback, there is no related sedan to this Outback. Yes, that's right. You can't call this a wagon anymore because there is no sedan relative to the new Outback. And the style is definitely more SUV than before. Although unlike some of those spy photos and maybe renderings you've seen, it still looks like an Outback. Up front, we have the new DRL and turn signal signature with a divorced headlight theme. This is something we're going to be seeing apparently in other Subaru models going forward. And then we have this big aggressive grille with a very different pattern up front. If you get the Wilderness, you get an even bolder look on the outside, but we'll talk about the Wilderness in just a second. Coming around to the side, you'll notice the bigger changes for the Outback in this generation. We have a bit of a square personality and a bit more of a traditional SUV profile, but still kind of wagon-like. I'm getting a little bit of, I don't know, Taurus X, certainly a bit of first generation Subaru Forester in the relatively tall greenhouse, but it is a little bit taller as far as the roofline versus the last generation Outback. Some Subaru fans are going to be disappointed in that because one of the classic reasons to get the Outback over the average SUV is that loading a bicycle or a kayak or your skis up to the roof was simply easier because it was closer to the ground. This is about 2 inches higher, but that gives us more cargo room in the way back. The other sort of divisive touch, I think, is going to be this body-colored panel right here between the rear doors and the very rear of the vehicle. So you can see it's part of that section. Although I have to admit, I kind of like it. And I kind of like it more in the Wilderness that we're going to take a look at in just a moment. As we come around to the rear, maybe some of those 1990s, 2000s Ford vibes are kind of coming back to you. In my mind, if we were looking at a 21st century Ford Ute from Australia, I think it might look something like this. And maybe I'm getting the Australia connection, of course, because of Outback. At any rate, we have an LED bar running almost across the back. Subaru logo right there in the middle, but we get a different rear end treatment in the Outback Wilderness. From this angle, it certainly looks like a member of the Subaru family, and here we find the reason for that taller roofline. Not only do we get a bit more headroom, we get a bit more cargo room height as well. So here it's about 2 inches taller, and that's where we get the extra 2 cubic feet inside. They've also gone ahead and given us some cool cargo carrying touches like this new hammock style mat. Let me see if I can install this for you so you can see how this works. I'll let Travis come in close for the connection on this side. So we have a little loop here that goes way back there. Then we get some hooks. Those hook on these cargo tie-down points. So whether you're using this or not, we get lots of cargo tie-downs. They can snap in all the way at the rear section and then are held down by a little magnet there. That does seem to pop off easily, although this is an early pre-production prototype. But you can also hook this in this midway position, and that's why they're calling this a hammock mat. So if you have something that you want to keep protected from rolling around, you can actually put it right there in the hammock. This will support up to 25 or 30 pounds, somewhere around there. Now, under the load floor, we have a cargo divider where we find the jack, the tow hooks, etc. All the way under there, we find a temporary spare tire. I suspect that given the general dimensions here, you would be able to fit a full-size spare tire in here if you wanted to, but you'd have to figure out your own foam divider because that is a little on the tall side. Now, with this closed, let's take a look at the rest of the back here. Down below, you can see we have the Subaru logo, or rather Subaru imprinted on that big bumper in the back. Parking sensors in the rear. We have reflectors there. This is an aero vent to help reduce pressure in that rear wheel well. And then if we come around the side, Subaru is obviously a company that loves roof rails and cargo practicality. So this little arrow indicates where you can tie things down. Of course, you're going to get orange accents on the Wilderness, but this roof system is pretty sturdy. It'll do 800 pounds of static load, about 200 pounds of active load. So when you're driving down the road, you can still have 200 pounds on the roof. That's long been a Subaru hallmark. And they really wanted to stay with the adventurous personality that customers expect from their Subaru. Interestingly, Subaru shoppers seem to be the most likely in the SUV segment to actually do mild soft-roading or camping with their vehicle than even Jeep and Bronco owners. So that's why we have a lot of these little touches around the vehicle. Now, obviously, if you wanted to do hardcore off-roading, you might want something else, because under the hood, we have basically the same engine lineup that we had last year. Things are going to start out with a 2.5 liter boxer 4-cylinder engine. It's going to produce 180 horsepower, or yes, we still get a turbocharged engine. This is the turbo boxer that we see in other Subarus, 260 horsepower under this hood. Both engines are still mated to a continuously variable automatic transmission, and I don't expect fuel economy to change too dramatically because ground clearance is still class leading, way over 8 inches in basically every Outback. But dimensionally, the rest of the Outback is right in line with the previous model. It's a little bit taller, a little bit wider, and a little bit longer, but the wheelbase is importantly the same. So the breakover angle is likely the same, and approach and departure angles are probably only going to be minorly altered versus the outgoing model. Now let's check out the Outback Wilderness, because if you want to take your Subaru further into the Outback, that's probably the model you're going to want. Here it is, everybody. I am at the top of a windy hill looking at the new Outback Wilderness. This has some pretty big changes versus the rest of the Outback lineup. Obviously, there are the aesthetic changes. You'll notice we have a different grille here, Subaru spelled out big and bold up front. It looks like we may get a little bit more cooling than the rest of the lineup. Definitely has that aggressive vibe you'd expect in the off-road trim. We still have the divorced headlight DRL arrangement up front. Down below, we have the signature Wilderness trim around there, the orange accents. Of course, the hexagonal modules in that fog light. We have a bit more ground clearance, and we have the turbocharged engine standard in the Wilderness model. Coming around the side, you'll notice we have the black trim right there, black sticker on the hood. Then we get unique wheels and all-terrain tires, dualer all-terrains. These are a 225/65 R17, so nice chunky tire for something in this class. We do not get too much expanded underbody protection, so we don't have big steel panels under there or anything like that, but we do have gold accents for the load points on the roof rails. The roof rails are still rated for the same approximately 220 pounds live load, 800 pound static load, but check out the Wilderness badge. I think that really finishes the look with that body color panel right there on the C-pillar. I apologize for the wind noise. We're practically blowing away on the top of this hill, but finishing out the Outback Wilderness is the rear end design, which has also been changed versus the rest of the Outback. See back here, instead of that big light bar running across the rear, we get what they're calling gear rests. And if you come in close, they actually have a little side to them. So that way, if you put your snowboard or your skis or whatever on there, they won't slide off. It's just somewhere to rest that. And that's why these are not painted black with the rest of the rear. But we get shiny black here. We get the backup lights with the orange accents. And importantly, down here at the bottom of the bumper, we have a 2-inch receiver, same towing capacity, 3,500 pounds as before, but we have a 7-pin and a 4-pin harness for wiring. That's something I really appreciate, having trailers with both 4 and 7 pins at home myself. Now, there is going to be a cover over that area. This one does not have the cover installed on it, and I appreciate that they are showing us without the cover, so you can see what it's like for people that actually tow regularly. You can actually see that I think it's relatively well finished, all things considered. This model is painted in the signature Wilderness blue paint color. We don't have any information on approach, breakover, or departure angles, but again, I suspect that the breakover angle is pretty similar to before. Approach and departure may be slightly different due to the different dimensions. Now let's take a look at the inside so we can get out of the wind. On the inside, we get some interior upgrades. We still have the Subaru Wilderness logo embossed on the head restraint and gold accents inside as well, but you can now get Napa leather on the inside to have the Wilderness treatment with the bit of luxury that some customers are asking for. Gold accents, of course, on the shifter and over here on the steering wheel. We get the same big screens in the dash and, of course, for that instrument cluster as well. Rounding out the Wilderness treatment is, of course, unique traction management software, and importantly, a first for Subaru, we have adaptive dampers in the Wilderness model. I'm really intrigued to see what those drive like. They're not going to be mode selectable independently. Apparently, it's going to be tied to the X mode that you're in. And it's going to prioritize not only stable ride when you're out on a regular road surface, but also increased comfort when you're off-roading on more rugged surfaces like this. And they sort of demonstrated that by driving this over the rock pile a few times here. Let's check out the interior now, starting with the driver's seat. One thing I noticed is that the doors have a more substantial sound to them and feel, so they've definitely started tuning that towards customer preferences. We have 4-way adjustable lumbar support down here, something I really appreciate, especially in a vehicle like the Outback, which is competing against not just RAV4 and CR-V, but also the next step up in their lineup. Certainly, the crown for this vehicle, but also something like the Honda Passport, an Atlas Cross Sport, depending on exactly how you feel about mid-size SUVs. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a pretty large range of motion, and I actually think these seats are really quite comfortable. We even have an extending thigh cushion, so lots of adjustability in this top model. Thigh support is something that we're seeing missing in a decent number of even luxury branded vehicles. Let's check out the back now, because we should get a little bit more headroom than before, but I suspect legroom is going to be pretty similar. Keep in mind, Subaru has not released any official legroom numbers, but this is an area where the Outback has always done well. So I have about 9 inches of legroom there. If I scoot over to this side, you'll notice still quite a lot of legroom. Headroom, definitely better, I think, than the outgoing Outback. That's probably the biggest beneficiary to this more upright ceiling. Now, we don't know whether this is the final headliner in the Outback, but it does feel just a little bit cheesy up here. We'll see when this goes on sale. As far as the rear seat design goes, 60/40 folding. We have a fold down armrest with 2 cup holders right there. But you'll notice center seat belt still comes out of the ceiling. Not the biggest fan of that location, although there is a little holder there, so that would help align it a little bit more into the center of the seat back. As far as child seat fitment goes, you will definitely have enough room in here for the rear facing variety. They put the latch anchors behind this little Velcro section, not my favorite, but easy to access latch anchors right behind there, and then you can tuck that and the Cheerios back away for later. Now let's see just how much room we would have for those child seats back here. 11 inches from the back, and we are at 31 inches to the rear seat back. Depending on where we are here, it's at least 30 inches, so significantly more room than actually some of the vehicles we've tested lately. That's long been a hallmark. Family friendliness, it sure continues here. On the inside, we see some pretty big changes versus the previous generation, because this Outback is previewing a bunch of interior components and technologies that we'll find in future Subaru models. But keep in mind, this is a very early pre-production prototype, so not all the fit and finish is quite right. In fact, the exterior has some pieces of tape on it. We have a sunglass holder up here, the SOS system right there. Looks like we have a digital rear camera right there. Instead of slide to the side sun visors, we have slide out extension sun visors, but we do have vanity mirrors with lights for both the driver and the front passenger. Up here on the ceiling, we have a single opening moonroof, so no panoramic design here. And it does cut back on the room back there just in front of Travis's head, but you can see how much headroom he has in the back. It's really quite a lot there. We have 2-way adjustable head restraints and height adjustable shoulder belts for the driver and the front passenger. New textures for the upholstery here. These are perforated because they are heated and ventilated, but we also have some new stitching patterns and some embossed patterns on those bolsters for the side cushion. Now, the bolstering on the front seat back and seat bottom cushion is perhaps a little bit more aggressive than the previous generation Outback. I actually found that pretty comfortable. The seat bottom cushion especially there has a more aggressive bolster. We have fabric, or I should say carpet-like inserts in the front door bottle holders to help keep things from rattling around, and a decent percentage of soft touch materials all the way around the cabin. On the doors, you can see we have this 2-tone color theme, soft touch materials around the armrest and the upper section of the door, hard plastics lower, and those soft touch materials wrap around to the dashboard, where we find a rubbery upper section. This midsection color matches the seats, but it's not the same material, and then we have a very similar imitation leather right there in the mid portion of the dash with stitching on it. We have a storage compartment right there in the middle where you could easily put your smartphone. And then we have a bin-style glove compartment that I suspect would easily be able to fit a tablet computer inside. Speaking of tablet computer, we do not have a tablet stuck onto the dash design, but this is definitely a big screen in the dashboard. This is pointing a new direction for Subaru's infotainment software, so I'm really intrigued to see what this is like to live with. You can see it supports factory navigation there. It doesn't look very familiar to other nav interfaces. The nav data is actually from TomTom. We have a different media interface than we've had before. Of course, it's going to support smartphone projection, and our setting screens, things like eyesight, driver assistance, etc. This has all been significantly improved versus the previous generation of Subaru software. Subaru software has always been easy to use, but it's never been the most modern looking, and I think this is definitely taking that software in a new direction. But for the uninitiated, the bigger change is that it's not a big vertical screen in the dashboard. And even though it is in this vertical alignment, you can see it's not just a stuck-on tablet display like we find in a lot of other vehicles these days either. There's some big air vents below that. We find the engine start-stop button down there. New controls for the automatic climate control system. This is a 2-zone automatic climate control. Down here we find a Qi wireless charging mat, along with a USB-C interface for the system, a USB-A charge-only port. Pretty typical console shifter, similar to other Subaru models. Some new buttons down here for things like the auto start, stop, enable, disable, 360-degree camera system, 2 big cup holders right there. Let's take a look at those cameras for just 1 second, because this screen's format gives us the biggest camera views that we've ever seen in a Subaru, and we have some nice crisp imaging thanks to the new camera designs as well. Back between the seats, we have a padded center armrest that opens to reveal a pretty big storage area for a vehicle like this. Keep in mind, we do have a longitudinal transmission, so the transmission and all-wheel drive system is living under this console area. We then have a 12-volt power outlet right there. Over on the driver's side, we find a full LCD instrument cluster with a bunch of different views, including a full moving map display and apparently also a 2-screen display for your smartphone integration. The steering wheel is one of the few familiar things in here from other Subaru models. It's a round wheel design with some pretty minor sport grips up top, paddles on the back for imitation gear shifting from the CVT. No word about a hybrid model. That's something I would love to see. But over here we have some infotainment buttons and the button to control the mode for that full LCD instrument cluster. On this side we find the controls for the Subaru EyeSight system and then a heated steering wheel toggle right there on that side. So there you have it. This is the all-new latest generation Subaru Outback, and it is not the Outback that we have known in the past because there is no sedan corollary and likely never will be. We all know that sedan sales are falling. Subaru recognized that in the last generation of Outback, where they killed off the legacy sedan before the model had ended production. And with this generation, we're probably never going to see one. So that solves the whole is it a wagon, is it not a wagon conundrum that I know some people get really wrapped up in. Honestly, it's never bothered me at all whether you want to call it a wagon or not a wagon, because the practicality was what was important. And we see some of that here, admittedly 2 inches taller, so 2 inches less practical for shorter people. But for my height, this is still significantly easier to load cargo onto than just about anything else with around 9 inches of ground clearance. That is still a Subaru selling point for the Outback. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section below. And are you, like me, waiting for a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid version of this? I suspect they could definitely stick a battery pack under that cargo load floor. They would probably give up the spare tire like we see in the upcoming other hybrids from Subaru, but I would not be surprised at all if maybe next year or 2 years down the road, we did see an Outback hybrid rolling off the line. Subaru has reinvested into hybrids. We're going to see a hybrid Crosstrek and a hybrid Forester with the same hybrid system, and logically, it would fit under this because this is closely related to the other Subarus in the lineup as far as its drivetrain. We just don't know when or if that hybrid model might come online. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section below. And are you team Subaru? Are you interested in the Crown wagon? Or would you consider something a little bit boxier, like the new Honda Passport? See all of you later.